Polish Tales. The Frog Princess. There was once a king who was very old, but he had 3 grown-up sons. So he called them to him and said, "My dear sons, I am very old, and the cares of government press heavily upon me. I must therefore give them over to one of you. But as it is the law among us that no unmarried prince may be king, I wish you all to get married, and whoever chooses the best wife shall be my successor." So they determined each to go a different way, and settled it thus. They went to the top of a very high tower, and each one at a given signal shot an arrow in a different direction to the others. Wherever their arrows fell, they were to go in search of their future wives. The eldest prince's arrow fell on a palace in the city. There lived a senator, who had a beautiful daughter, so he went there, and he married her. The second prince's arrow struck upon a country house, where a very pretty young lady, the daughter of a rich gentleman, was sitting, so he went there, and proposed to her, and they were married. But the youngest prince's arrow shot through a green wood, falling into a lake. He saw his arrow floating among the reeds, and a frog sitting thereon, looking fixedly upon him. But the marshy ground was so unsafe that he could not venture upon it, so he sat down in despair. "What is the matter, Prince?" asked the frog. "Oh, what is the matter? Why, I cannot reach the arrow on which you are sitting." "Then take me for your wife, and I will give it to you." "But how can you be my wife, little frog?" "That is just what has got to be. You know that you shot your arrow from the tower, thinking that where it fell you would find a loving wife. So you will have her in me." "Oh, you are very wise, I see, little frog. But tell me, how can I marry you, or introduce you to my father, and what will the world say?" "Take me home with you. Let nobody see me, and tell them you have married an Eastern lady, who must not be seen by any man, except her husband, nor even by another woman." The prince considered a little. The arrow had now floated to the margin of the lake, and he took the arrow from the little frog, put her in his pocket, and carried her home, and then went to bed, sighing very deeply. Next morning the king was told that all of his sons had gotten married, so they called them all together and said, "Well, children, are you all pleased with your wives?" "Oh, very pleased indeed, father and king." "Well, we shall see who has chosen the best. Let each of my daughters-in-law weave me a carpet by tomorrow, and the one whose carpet is the most beautiful shall be queen." The elder princes hastened at once to their ladies, but the youngest, when he reached home, was in despair. "What is the matter, prince?" asked the frog. "Oh, what is the matter? My father has ordered that each of the daughters-in-law shall weave him a carpet, and the one whose carpet proves the most beautiful shall be first in rank. My brothers' wives are most likely working at their looms already, but you, little frog, although you can give back an arrow and talk like a human, will not be able to weave a carpet, as far as I can see." "Oh, do not be afraid," she said. "Go to sleep, and before you wake, the carpet shall be ready." So he lay down, trusting, and went to sleep. But the little frog stood on her hind legs in the window and sang, "Ye breezes that blow, ye winds that sigh, come hither on airy wing, and all of you straight to my dwelling high, and various treasure bring. 2 fleeces I crave of the finest wool, and of the loveliest flowers a basket full. From the depths of the ocean bring sands of gold, and pearl drops of lustre many-fold, that so I may fashion a carpet bright, adorned with fair flowers and gems of light, and weave it in one short day and night, when my true love's hand must the treasure hold." There was a gentle murmur of the breezes, and from the sunbeams descended 7 lovely maidens, who floated into the room, carrying baskets of the various colored wools, pearls, and flowers. They curtsied deeply to the little frog, and in a few minutes they wove a wonderfully beautiful carpet. Then, curtsying again, they flowed away. Meanwhile, the wives of the other princes bought the most beautifully colored wools and the best designs they could find, and they worked hard at their looms all of the next day. Then all the princes came before the king and spread out their carpets before him. The king looked at the first, and then at the second, but when he came to the third, he exclaimed, "This is the carpet. I give the first place to my youngest son's wife." But it seems that there must be another trial yet, and he ordered that each of his daughters-in-law should make him a cake the next day, and the husband of the one whose cake proved the best should be his successor. The youngest prince came back to his frog wife, and he looked very thoughtful, and he sighed very deeply. "What is the matter, prince?" she asked. "My father demands another proof of skill, and I am not so sure that we shall succeed so well as before. For how will you be able to bake a cake?" "Do not be afraid," she said. "Lie down, close your eyes, and sleep, and when you wake, you will be in a happier frame of mind." The prince went to sleep, and the frog sprang again to the window and sang, "Ye breezes that blow, ye winds that sigh, come hither on airy wing, and all of you straight to my dwelling high, these various gifts to bring. From the sunbeams bright bring me heat and light, and soft waters to still. From the pure flowing rill, from the flowers of the field, the sweet odors they yield. From the wheat fields obtain 5 full measures of grain, that I so may bake in the night time a cake for my true love's sake." The winds then began to rise, and once again the 7 beautiful maidens floated down onto the room. They carried baskets with flour, water, sweetmeats, and all other sorts of dainties. They curtsied to the little frog, and they got the cake ready in a few minutes. They curtsied once more and flew away. The next day the 3 princes brought their cakes to the king. They were all very good, but when he tasted the one made by the youngest son's wife, he exclaimed, "This is the cake for me, light, floury, white, and delicious. I see, my son, you have made the best choice, but something tells me we must wait a little longer." The 2 elder sons went away much depressed, but the youngest greatly elated. When he reached home, he took up his little frog, stroked her back, and kissed her, saying, "Tell me, my love, how was it that you, being only a little frog, could weave such a beautiful carpet, or make such a delicious cake?" "Because, my prince, I am not what I seem. I am a princess, and my mother is the renowned Queen of Light, and a great enchantress. But she has many enemies, who, as they could not injure her, were always seeking to destroy me. To conceal me from them, she was obliged to turn me into a frog, and for 7 years I have been forced to stay in the marsh where you found me. But under this frog skin I am really quite more beautiful than you could imagine. Yet until my mother has conquered all of her enemies, I must wear this disguise. After that finally takes place, you shall see me again as I really am." While they were talking, 2 courtiers entered, with the king's orders to the young prince to come to a banquet at the king's palace, and to bring his wife with him, as his brothers were doing by theirs. He knew not what to do, but the little frog said, "Do not be afraid, my prince. Go to your father alone, and when he asks for me, it will begin to rain. You must then say that your wife will follow you, but she is now bathing in Maydew. When it lightens, say that I am dressing, and when it thunders, that I am coming." The prince, trusting her word, set out once for the palace, and the frog once more jumped to the window, and standing on her hind legs began to sing, "Ye breezes that blow, ye winds that sigh, come hither on airy wing, and all you straight to my dwelling high, these several gifts to bring. My beauty of yore, and my bright youth once more, and all my dresses so fair, and my jewels so rare, and let me delight my dear love by the sight." Then the 7 beautiful damsels, who were the handmaidens of the princess, when she once lived with her mother, floated down upon the sunbeams into the room. They curtsied, walked 3 times around her, and pronounced magical words. Then the frog's skin fell off of her, and she stood among them a miracle of beauty, and the lovely princess that she truly was. Meanwhile, the prince, her husband, had arrived at the royal banquet hall, which was already full of guests. The old king welcomed him warmly, and asked him, "My son, where is your wife?" A light rain began to fall, and the prince said, "She will not be long. She is now bathing herself in the Maydew." Then came a sudden flash of lightning, which illuminated all the palace, and he said, "Ah, she is now adorning herself." But when it thundered a mighty ram, he ran to the door, exclaiming, "Ah, here she is!" And the lovely princess walked in, seeming to bring all of the sunshine with her. They all stood amazed at her beauty, and the king could not contain his delight. She seemed to him all the more beautiful because he thought her the very image of his own long-deceased queen. The prince himself was no less astonished and overjoyed to find such loveliness in her, whom he had only yet seen as the shape of a small frog. "Tell me, my son," said the king, "why did you not let me know what a fortunate choice that you had made?" The prince told him everything in a soft whisper, and the king said, "Go home then, my son, at once, and pick up that frog skin of hers, throw it in the fire, and come back here as fast as you can. Then she will have to remain just as she is now." The prince did as his father told him. He went home, and he threw the frog skin into the fire, where it was at once consumed. But things did not turn out as they expected, for the lovely princess, on coming home, sought for her frog skin, and when not finding it, she began to cry most bitterly. When the prince confessed the truth, she shrieked aloud, and taking out a green poppy head, threw it at him. He fell asleep at once, and she sprang up to the window and sang her songs to the winds, upon which he was changed into a duck, and then flew away. The prince woke up in the morning, and grieved most sadly, for when he found his beautiful princess gone. Then he got upon his horseback and set out to find her, inquiring everywhere for the kingdom of the Queen of Light, his princess's mother. For the kingdom of the Queen of Light, his princess's mother, to whom he supposed that she must have fled to. He rode on for a very, very long time, much wearied, till one day he came into a wide plain, covered with poppies in full flower, the odor of which was very overpowering to him, that he could scarce keep upright in his saddle. And when he saw a queer little house, supported on 4 crooked little legs, there was no door to this house, but knowing that he ought to do, he said, "Little house, move on your crooked legs free, turn your back to the wood, and your front door to me." The hut with the crooked legs made a loud creaking noise, stood, and turned around, with its door towards the prince. He went straight in, and found in an old fury, whose name was Janza, inside. She was spinning from a distaff, and singing. "Why, you prince," she said, "what brings you here?" So the prince told her his story, and she said, "You have done wisely in telling me the truth. I know your bride, this beautiful daughter of the Queen of Light. She flies to my house quite daily in the shape of a duck, and this is where she sits. Hide yourself under the table, and watch your opportunity to lay hold of her. Hold her fast, young prince, whatever shape she assumes. When she is tired, she will turn into a spindle. You must then break that spindle in two, and you will find that which you are seeking." Presently the duck flew in, sat down beside the old fury, and began to preen her feathers with her beak. The prince, then leaping out from the table, seized her by the wing, and the duck quacked, fluttered, and struggled mightily to get loose. But seeing this was useless, she then changed herself into a pigeon, then into a hawk, and then into a serpent, which so frightened the prince that he let her go. She became a duck again, quacked aloud, and flew out the window. The prince, weeping at his mistake, and the old woman crying aloud, "What have you done, you careless fellow? You frightened her away from me forever. But as she is already your bride, I must find some other way to help you." Take this ball of thread, throw it before you, and wherever it goes, follow. You will then come to my sister's house, and she will tell you what to do next." So the prince went on day and night, following the ball of thread, till they came again to another queer little house, like the first. Again he said the same rhyme, and coming in, found the second old fury, and told her his story. Yes, yes. Hide under the bench," she exclaimed. "Your bride is just returning." The duck then flew in, as before, and the prince caught her by the wing. She quacked, and she tried to get away. She turned herself into a mighty turkey, then a dog, and then into a cat, then into an eel, so that she slipped so easily through his hands, and glided once more out the window. The prince was deep in despair, but the old woman gave him another ball of thread, and he again followed it, determining not to let the princess escape again. So going on after the thread, as it kept unwinding, he came again to a funny little house, much like the first's, and said, "Little house, move on your crooked legs free, turn your back to the wood, and your front door to me." The little house turned around so that he could go in, and he found a third old fury inside, much older than her other sisters, and having deep white hair. He told her his story, and begged her for her help. "Why did you go against the wishes of your clever and sensible wife?" said the old woman. "You see, she knew better than you what a frog skin was good for. But you must needs be in such a hurry to display her beauty, to gain the world's applause. You've lost her, and she was forced to fly away from you." The prince, crying, hid himself under the bench, and the duck flew in and sat at the old woman's feet, on which he caught her by the wings. She struggled hard, but she felt his strength was too great for her to resist, so she turned herself into a spindle. He broke it across his knee, and lo and behold, instead of the two halves of the spindle, he held the hands of his beautiful princess. She looked at him lovingly with her beautiful eyes, and smiled sweetly and sadly. She promised him then that she would always remain as she was then, for since her mother's enemies were dead, she had nothing to fear. They embraced each other, and went out of the old fury's hut. Then the princess spoke a magical spell, and in the twinkling of an eye they appeared a wonderful bridge, reaching from where they stood hundreds of miles up to the very gallery of the palace, belonging to the prince's father. It was all made of crystal, with golden handrails and diamond bosses upon them. The princess spoke some more magical words, and a golden coach appeared, drawn by 8 horses, a coachman, with 2 tall footmen, all in golden liveries, and there were 4 outriders on splendid horses, riding by the side of the coach, and on an equerry riding in front, and below a brazen trumpet, and a long procession of followers, all in splendid dress, came after. Then the prince and the princess got into the golden coach, and drove away, thus accompanied along the crystal bridge till they reached home. When the old king came out to meet them, and embraced them both so tenderly, he appointed the prince his successor, and such magnificent festivities were held on this occasion as were never seen or heard of before.